The boy didn't ask permission. He crossed the gymnasium floor at a dead run, dodged around a folding table, and wrapped both arms around a man he had never met in his life. The man froze. "You sound like my dad," the boy said into his jacket. "Please don't go. You sound just like my dad." Around them, the school gymnasium continued its usual Saturday noise. The fundraiser setup crew moved between tables. Volunteers unfolded chairs. No one had been paying attention until that moment, and then everyone was. Across the room, Adrian Voss moved toward them with the controlled urgency of a woman who had spent years learning to manage situations before they became scenes. She was too late for that. The boy had already made a scene. He was pressing his face against the stranger's jacket, and he was crying, and the sound of it was not the performance of a child seeking attention. It was the sound of something breaking open. Adrian Kowalski was the kind of man who arrived early and left without being noticed. At 41, he had developed this into something close to an art form. Not from shyness, but from the quiet efficiency of someone who understood that most jobs got done better when nobody was watching. He had volunteered to help set up for the Waverly Elementary fall fundraiser because his daughter Nora had asked him to, and Adrian Kowalski did not say no to his daughter unless he had a very good reason. He had arrived at 7:30 with a folding hand truck and a willingness to move heavy things. The gymnasium was cold and half-lit when he got there, the folding tables stacked against the far wall, the chairs still in their canvas bags. He signed the volunteer sheet, accepted a name badge, and got to work. He was not thinking about anything in particular when the boy found him. That was how it always went with the moments that changed things. They arrived when you were somewhere else entirely. Nora was in 3rd grade at Waverly. She was 8 years old and fiercely opinionated about breakfast foods, the proper way to fold napkins, and which chapters of her chapter books were allowed to be skipped. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's way of going completely still when she was thinking hard, a quality that Adrian found simultaneously endearing and slightly unnerving, because it meant that whatever came next had been thoroughly considered. He raised her alone. Her mother, Renata, had died of an aneurysm 3 years ago, a Tuesday in February that had reorganized Adrian's understanding of what a single day could cost a person. Nora had been 5. She did not talk about her mother often, but when she did, she was precise. She remembered specific things. The particular shampoo Renata used, the way she pronounced certain words, the song she sang when she thought no one was listening. Adrian understood memory that way too. He had stopped expecting it to operate logically a long time ago. He had been lifting a section of folding table when the boy hit him at full speed. The table went down safely. Adrian had good reflexes. He steadied himself and looked down. The boy was perhaps 7, dark-haired, wearing a blue hoodie that was slightly too big for him. His face was pressed against Adrian's left shoulder, and his arms were locked around Adrian's ribs with the grip of someone holding on against a current. "Hey," Adrian said. He kept his voice low and even, the same tone he used with Nora when she woke from bad dreams. "Hey, it's all right. You sound like my dad," the boy said. He did not loosen his grip. "You sound exactly like him." Adrian put one hand on the boy's back, very gently, the way you would with any frightened child. He looked up. Across the gymnasium, several volunteers had stopped what they were doing. One of them was already moving toward him with a phone in her hand. "What's your name?" Adrian asked. "Sam," the boy said. "Samuel." "Okay. Can you tell me where your mom is?" "She's at the sign-in table," Sam said. "But I don't want to go back there." "Why not?" Sam tightened his grip instead of answering. It was not evasion. It was the answer. Adrian Voss arrived 2 minutes later. She was the kind of woman who entered a room and immediately understood its architecture, not the physical layout, but the social one, who held authority, who was uncertain where the pressure points were. She had built a company from a consulting firm. She started at 29 into a regional employer of 240 people, and she ran it with the specific competence of someone who had never been able to afford the luxury of being wrong twice. Her son Sam was 7. She had been alone with him for 2 years. She saw Sam first. Then she saw the man he was attached to, and she stopped reading the room and started reading him instead with the rapid, thorough attention she applied to anything she didn't immediately understand. "Sam," she said. Her voice was measured. Sam did not move. "Samuel." A degree more precise. "He sounds like Dad," Sam said. Adrian's expression did not change, but something behind it shifted. A slight adjustment. A door that had been open a crack moving slightly further open and then being very deliberately closed. She crouched down to her son's level without looking away from Adrian. "Come here, baby." "I don't want to." She looked up at Adrian then, directly. "I'm sorry, he doesn't usually." She stopped. Started again. "I'm going to need you to let go of this man now, please. I don't want to." Adrian kept his hand on Sam's back and met Adrian's eyes. "He's okay," he said. "He's not hurting anything." Her jaw shifted slightly. "I didn't ask for your assessment." "No," Adrian agreed. "You didn't." She straightened up, looked at him with the particular expression of a woman recalibrating. "Who are you?" "Adrian Kowalski. I'm a volunteer. My daughter goes to school here." He paused. "I have a work badge if you need to see it. What do you do?" He almost smiled at the non sequitur, but didn't. "I'm an HVAC engineer. I work maintenance contracts for commercial buildings." Something passed across her face so quickly he almost missed it. Then it was gone. "Sam," she said quietly, "come on." Sam finally released Adrian's jacket, but slowly, with the reluctance of someone relinquishing something they weren't sure they'd be able to find again. He took his mother's hand. He looked back at Adrian once before Adrian guided him toward the sign-in table, and the look on his face was one Adrian recognized because he had seen it before. It was the look of a child who has encountered something real and is afraid it will be taken away before he can understand it. Adrian watched them go. He went back to unfolding tables. He was good at working through things he didn't understand by moving his hands. He did not sleep well that night. He sat in the kitchen of the house he rented 3 blocks from the school and thought about the boy's voice. "You sound exactly like him." Children that age did not manufacture things like that. They didn't have the sophistication for it. They responded to what was real, or they didn't respond at all. Sam had not been performing. Sam had been recognizing something, and the certainty in his voice had been the same certainty Adrian had heard in Nora's voice when she talked about things that mattered to her. He thought about Adrian Voss's face when he mentioned HVAC engineering. That slight shift, there and gone. He thought about Connor Voss because he had recognized the name without quite knowing why until he was halfway home, and then it had come to him all at once, the way things do when memory is working at its own pace. Connor Voss. He had seen that name on a contractor manifest 2 years ago, maybe 2.5. A building systems project for a corporate campus in the east side of the city. Adrian had been brought in as a subcontractor on the mechanical side. The project lead had been an engineering firm, and the firm had had a principal named Connor Voss. Adrian had never met him directly. He worked in the equipment rooms. He dealt with documentation and specs. But there had been a morning near the end of the project when Adrian had been working late in the mechanical room, and someone had come down to ask a question about the air handling units. Someone from the engineering side who had gotten turned around on his way to another floor, and they had talked for maybe 20 minutes about the system architecture. Adrian had given him a tour of the setup without thinking much of it. The man had listened, the way engineers listened when they were genuinely curious and not just performing interest. He had asked good questions. He had not been condescending. Adrian had not caught his name. He pulled up the old project files on his laptop at midnight. He found the contractor manifest. He found the name, Connor Voss, project principal, Voss Engineering Solutions. He had been on that job from the start. He had died 8 months after the project closed, a cardiac event that the obituary described with the clinical neutrality used for things that are sudden and make no sense. He had been 38. He had left behind a wife and a son who had been 5 years old at the time. Adrian sat with that for a long time. He did not know what it meant. He did not know how a 7-year-old boy could carry a memory of a voice he had heard, if he had ever heard it at all. Children that age retained auditory memory better than adults understood. The research was unambiguous on this. Sensory impressions laid down before language fully developed had a different kind of durability. They did not live in words. They lived somewhere older. But Sam would have been 5 during that project. Adrian didn't know if Connor Voss had ever brought his son to a job site. He didn't know if there had been a phone call Sam had overheard, or a recording, or a video. He didn't know the shape of what he was missing. He just knew the boy had not been confused. By 1 in the morning, he had made a decision that he understood, from the outside, looked like exactly the wrong one. He would find a way to talk to Adrian Voss again. Not to push anything, not to claim anything. Only because the boy's face sat in his mind with the specific weight of something unresolved. And Adrian had been a father long enough to know that there were things you did not let sit unresolved if you could help it. He went to the school on Monday morning to drop Nora off. He was not lurking. He was doing what he did every Monday. But he had arrived 10 minutes earlier than usual, and he was paying a different kind of attention to the parking lot. Adrian Voss's car was there. She was walking toward the entrance with Sam's backpack over one shoulder and Sam's hand in hers. She saw Adrian at the same moment he saw her. Her step did not break, but her shoulders moved slightly, a small adjustment, the posture of someone deciding in real time how to handle an encounter. He waited by the entrance. She stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Kowalski," she said. "I'm sorry to?" "You're not lurking," she said, with a flatness that suggested she had already had this argument with herself. "You're dropping off your daughter. I can see her." She glanced at Nora, who had already peeled off toward her classroom with the purposeful energy of a child who has a specific friend she needs to find. "Sam talked about you last night." Adrian said nothing. "He doesn't do that," Adrian said. "He hasn't talked about a person that way in 2 years." She looked at him steadily. "What did my husband do on that project?" "The Meridian campus job." He blinked. "How did you know?" "Connor kept files. I went through them last night." Her voice was even, but the evenness was the product of effort, not ease. "Your name is in the subcontractor records. You were on the mechanical side. I was. Did you meet him?" Adrian told her about the evening in the mechanical room. The 20 minutes. The conversation about the air handling units. He told it carefully, with the same precision he brought to technical explanations, because he understood that the details mattered to her in a way that went beyond professional interest. Adrian listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "He came home that night and told me he'd met someone who understood systems the way musicians understand instruments," she said. "He said the man had been working alone in a basement for 6 hours and was more enthusiastic about the problem than anyone he'd talked to in months." She paused. "He said that was the rarest kind of mind, someone who could hold the whole architecture in their head." Adrian looked at the sidewalk. "He recorded voice memos," Adrian said. "Connor. He used them instead of taking notes. He recorded everything, project observations, ideas, things he wanted to remember." She stopped. "Sam found the phone last year, the old one, in a drawer. He listened to some of the recordings. I didn't know until he told me, weeks later." She looked at her son, who was standing a few feet away, watching them with the patient attention of a child who understands that adults are having a conversation that matters. "He would have heard your voice. If Connor recorded anything from that evening, Sam would have heard it." Adrian felt the pieces settle, not all at once, the way revelations worked in movies, but slowly, each one finding its place with the reluctance of things that have been in the wrong arrangement for a long time. "He wasn't confused on Saturday," Adrian said. "No," Adrian said, "he wasn't." She called him 3 days later. He had not expected her to. He had expected the conversation at the school door to be the last one, the kind of exchange that closes something rather than opening it. But his phone rang on a Thursday afternoon, a number he didn't have saved, and when he answered, she said only, "I found the recording." She played it for him over the phone. Connor Voss's voice first, clear and unhurried, narrating project observations with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to the format. Then, about 4 minutes in, a shift, the ambient sound of a mechanical room. Pipes, the low hum of equipment. And then Adrian's own voice, younger sounding than he expected, explaining the pressure differential in the secondary loop, and Connor Voss asking a question, and Adrian answering, and the two of them going back and forth for several minutes, with the particular rhythm of two people who have found an unexpected frequency. He had not remembered any of it until he heard it, and then he remembered all of it. "Sam has listened to that recording," Adrian said when the audio ended, "more times than I know." Adrian did not answer right away. He was sitting in his truck in the parking lot of a job site, the engine off, watching nothing. "He's been carrying a voice he didn't have a face for," he said finally. "Yes," Adrian said. There was a pause that was not uncomfortable. "I don't know what you want from this," she said. It was not hostile. It was the question of someone who had learned to ask the hard thing directly, because the alternatives were worse. "Nothing," Adrian said. "I'm not looking for anything. I don't know what there is to look for," he thought for a moment. "I just think your son recognized something real, and I think it matters that someone told him he was right." The silence on the other end was different this time. Something in it had shifted. She said, "All right, and then, I'll think about whether we can do something about that." He did not hear from her for a week, and then she texted a time and a location. A park, a Sunday afternoon, neutral ground in the particular way that only a park on a Sunday can be. Open, unhurried, easy to leave. He brought Nora. Adrian had suggested it, in the same matter-of-fact tone she seemed to use for anything that required a degree of courage. The two children met with the brief, intense assessment children use on each other, a rapid evaluation of compatibility that takes about 45 seconds and produces a verdict that adults rarely overturn. Nora decided Sam was acceptable. Sam decided Nora was interesting. They went to look at something on the other side of the park, with the abrupt togetherness of children who have made a pact. Adrian and Adrian sat on a bench at a reasonable distance. They did not talk about Connor. They talked about the children, and about the school, and about a construction project on the east side that Adrian had opinions about from a ventilation standpoint. Adrian had opinions about it from a structural load standpoint, which surprised him until she explained that she had a civil engineering background she had mostly abandoned for the business side. They talked about that for a while, with the particular ease of two people who share a technical vocabulary and rarely get to use it in social situations. Sam came back once, in the middle of a conversation about drainage specifications, and stood in front of Adrian with the considered gravity of a child who has been thinking. "My mom says you knew my dad," he said. "I met him once," Adrian said, briefly. "He was kind and he asked good questions." Sam thought about this. "He was really smart," he said. "I believe it." Sam nodded, satisfied, and went back to Nora. Adrian watched her son cross the grass. Something in her posture had changed while he wasn't watching her, a loosening, a small release, the way the body adjusts when it has been holding something heavy and finally finds a surface to set it on. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" She thought about it. "For being here when he ran at you and not making it into something it wasn't." Adrian looked out across the park. Nora had found a stick and was showing Sam something she had apparently decided required a stick. "He knew exactly what he was doing," he said. "I wasn't going to argue with him." Adrian almost laughed. It was very close to a laugh, the exact shape of it, and she seemed slightly surprised by how close it got. The weeks after that were not simple, but they were honest, which was its own kind of simplicity. Adrian came back on a Saturday in October when the leaves were fully turned, and then the Saturday after that, and then the one after that, without anyone naming the pattern or making arrangements about it. Nora and Sam developed the uncomplicated friendship of children who have decided they like the same kinds of problems. They built things out of sticks and argued about the right way to stack rocks, and invented a game whose rules changed every time they played and which seemed to have no object other than the game itself. Adrian were careful with each other in the way that people are when they have both carried something heavy for a long time and have learned to be suspicious of anything that promises to make it lighter. There were conversations that were hard. There were evenings where the history of what each of them had lost sat in the room between them with more presence than anything being said. But they were direct, and directness, Adrian had found, was the only currency that actually held its value. Sam stopped asking every Saturday if Adrian was going to come back. That was how Adrian knew the uncertainty had resolved. Children communicated the important things through what they stopped doing. One afternoon in November, the four of them had walked back to Adrian's house after a long afternoon at the park, coats damp and cheeks red. They came through the front door in the particular tumble of children and adults in cold weather, coats coming off, shoes going in wrong directions, everyone talking at once. Sam stopped in the front hallway and looked at the four of them with the grave satisfaction of someone who has arranged something according to plan. He looked at Adrian. "You sound different now," he said. Adrian looked down at him. "You sound warmer," Sam said. "You sounded warmer when you talked to my dad. Like you were interested." He considered Adrian for a moment. "You sound like that again now." No one spoke for a moment. "I am interested," Adrian said. Sam nodded, as if this confirmed something he had already worked out. He went upstairs to change his socks. Nora watched him go, and then looked at her father with the particular expression she reserved for situations she had decided to give him credit for managing. Adrian was standing by the coat hooks, and she had turned slightly away, her hand at her mouth for just a moment. When she turned back, her eyes were bright, and her voice was composed in the way that voices are composed when something behind them is not. "Stay for dinner," she said. Adrian said yes. Later, after the children had eaten and taken their separate and chaotic routes toward bedtime, Adrian sat across from Adrian at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she had poured and not drunk, and she said, without preamble, "He's going to be okay." Adrian understood she meant Sam. "He's already okay," he said. She looked at him. "You know what I mean." "I know." She looked at her coffee. "I've been waiting to be sure," she said. "About a lot of things, I'm not entirely sure yet." "That's fair," Adrian said. She looked up. "But I'm less unsure than I was." He didn't say anything. There was nothing to add to it. She had said the exact thing that was true, in the exact amount that was true. And he had learned a long time ago that the best response to precision was to leave it where it landed. They sat there a while longer while the house settled around them in its nighttime way, the particular quiet of a place where children have worn themselves out and are deeply, genuinely asleep, and where, for once, nothing is being managed, or held in place or kept from falling. It was just a house. It was just a table, two people at the end of a Saturday, with the week behind them and the week ahead, and between those two things for a moment, nothing that required anything. That was enough, for now. That was more than enough.